At the heart of horror, there has always been more than spooks and scares.
Sometimes, it's not what you see, but what you hear.
Welcome to Sound Scary.
Each week, we talk to the artists,
The musicians,
the fans, the people who haunt the shadowy corners of your mind.
join us as we delve into the deepest
Darkest.
and most unforgettable earscapes.
Welcome
To Sound Scary.
So welcome back to another episode of Sound Scary Quarantine Edition. I am your host, Ryan Cultrera.
And I'm James Oster. And Ryan, I gotta say something, because I feel like we say this every week, but here on Sound Scary, we get the best goddamn guests. We really do. And tonight's guest is like one of the coolest guys I know. He's one of the most talented, funny, charming, awesome dudes, and he has a great ass. It's Todd Farmer.
Just right off the bat.
Well, look, that's true, but you say that every week, don't you?
I see it every week. Every
No, just
time
about
I
the
see
ass.
you. Just about the ass. That's all
Yeah.
I do. I have like a shrine to your
Yeah,
ass. Somewhere in my house.
this is the first time it's ever applied because he always talks about yours specifically. It's so
Yeah,
weird.
that's weird.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Our
yeah,
show's
it's-
gone off the rails.
It's gone off the rails already. So, Todd, welcome. Thank you for joining us tonight. We're really excited to have you. As a kid, I grew up watching Friday the 13th, and you like get to freaking write a Friday the 13th movie. How did that come about? And what was your first like reaction to? Oh yeah, I get to write Jason.
I mean, it was completely unexpected because I was told it would never happen. Like when I started, I had met Dean Lorey, who wrote Jason Goes to Hell. He had just finished Major Pain, and he was on this Ron Howard movie, and he was on Madman, which is based on a comic book. He was on the other things for Universal at the time. And he said, I'm going to introduce you to Cunningham, because that's how I got my start. And we met with Sean, but Sean at the time didn't want to do horror. He wanted to do delinquent kids in Spanish Harlem and courtroom dramas. And so for 3 years I worked, Sean paid me a weekly pay, and I drove to his compound and sat in a maid's room and in a rocking chair and wrote. And I wrote all kinds of stuff, but none of it was horror. And then toward the end, Freddy vs. Jason had been in development that whole time, and it was, there was writers after writer after writers and just on, and he was getting frustrated. And he said, let's just do a Jason movie. And so he called Jimmy in, and we started talking.
Wow.
It was kind of overwhelming, but at the same time, I was used to going through that process, so it wasn't like dropped on me. I think if it had been dropped on me, I would have completely freaked out.
So the people watching this can't tell because of my horrible backlighting, but I'm doing this interview lakeside, which is appropriate because you took a famous lake dweller and you sent him to space. I need to know, like, when this was first pitched, how did they respond to that concept?
That was not the worst concept.
I love
There were, we basically talked about everything we could think of. And it was, Jason in the Hood and Jason in the Middle East and Jason, Jason and Gilbert Godfrey. I mean, we literally talked about Jimmy had this great setting, which I still think one day they should do. And that is, he wanted to do Jason in Camp Crystal Lake, but during the winter. So we were tracking people through the snow and that sort of thing. But we never had a story. We just had that setting. And then I suggested, my concern was I was always worried about Freddy vs. Jason, because I had even done a draft of Freddy vs. Jason at the time, which we sent to New Line, and about 2 weeks later we got it back in a very nice pass from them, but we realized they had never opened it. Like, it was still in the same package we'd sent it in. But they were like, you know what, this is really not for us.
Oh my God.
I know, welcome to Hollywood. So I was worried about, we didn't know what they were doing. We didn't know what time they were going to set it in. So I said, let's set it in the future. Let's do Blade Runner. And I pitched them sort of Jason's frozen and this class finds him. Mm-hmm. And they were like, we cannot afford to do Blade Runner. And I said, okay, well, let's do Alien, because Alien we could just do in a dark ship, and it's grungy and dirty, and we could totally do that. Mm-hmm. And everybody agreed. And so We did Alien, but we took Alien away.
Well, and to be fair, I don't think the face huggers would actually wake up when someone's having sex.
No,
I think that's a special thing. That's a special talent.
Yeah.
That's actually a perfect segue to my next question, because I was going to ask what were some of the aspects of the Friday franchise that you wanted to carry into your new spin. Obviously, the sex equals death being part of it.
Well, but that was also a horrible cheat. I mean, it was an absolute cheat. We knew that because DeLuca was running New Line at the time, and we knew he didn't like magic, he didn't like lightning, he didn't like rituals and religious rituals that wake Jason. We didn't know what he liked, but I was like, well, he'll like fucking. So that's how it's just, that's what Jason was always about premarital sex, and so he doesn't like it, nor drugs, and so that just seemed like a good way to wake him up. And you know what? It works. It's canon. It's canon now. You can't change it.
Honestly, I think that was one of those, when I saw the film the first time, I'm watching it in this crowd theater, and that happened, and I was like, well, I mean, it makes sense.
It totally tracks.
Yes.
Yeah.
That pisses Jason off.
I remember somebody telling me one time he went into he had done a bunch of studying of cryo freezing and all that sort of stuff, and he was like, well, actually, if you look at the time period and when he was found and the amount of time it would take to thaw, and this was just coincidental and I was like, dude, shut up. It's sex. They were doing the nasty, and he don't like the nasty, so he woke up. And have anything to do with science.
You gotta lean into it. I love it.
I love the fact that you so play with all the like the history of Friday the 13th. Was there anything that you tried to put in there that maybe didn't make it, like something that from another movie that you wanted to add in or anything like that?
We were given a lot of freedom when it came to all of that. I mean, certainly Sleeping Bag was my favorite kill.
Yeah.
And so, to be in a situation where you could sort of pay tribute to something that you really liked in another. And we did the same thing with Valentine later, but and we've done it with everything that we've done. But I thought that was always nice. And then Noel came up with the face freeze. He called me drunk one night and said, I can't remember what his approach was, but I took the idea and did what I did. But still, to this day, I think, people hate the movie, but they're like, oh, that was good. So,
well,
I love the movie. Like, not just saying that because we're interviewing you. Like, before I even met you, that's one of my favorites. Legit.
Well, I appreciate that. But if you go to IMDb, there's a question that says cancer or Jason X. Which is worse?
Are you serious? Are you... Todd, I've known you for a few years, and you deal with that kind of... I've seen you deal with that kind of asshole behavior from fans. Well, not fans, obviously. How do you deal with that? Does it ever get it to you? Does it ever get to a point where it's just like, shut the fuck up?
Not really, no. I mean, it's never... I mean, like when I would send scripts and people read them and come back and say, yeah, we don't really like it, I would be like, I would feel sorry for them for not getting it. And I know that sounds arrogant, but I mean, you have to have a certain amount of ego to do what we do, because we're basically walking into a room, we're pulling our junk out, we're putting it on the table, and people are saying, well, I liked that part of it, but not really that part. And so you got to be okay with that. So the fact that all these people hate it, and there's a good chunk that hate it, that's fine. They paid to see it, and so...
And I bet most of them have it on freaking DVD in their collection.
Yeah,
I bet everyone does.
And now everybody's going to get a chance to own a gigantic collection that's coming out. So,
oh yeah, that's true.
How much can you talk about what we're about to see on Friday the 13th with this new collection?
I mean, I don't know who else was involved, but I know that Peter contacted me ages ago, and we started collecting new footage and new stuff, new interviews and stuff for this to happen.
Do you show your butt though?
I always show my butt. I mean, I'm not even wearing pants now, but. I mean, I'm wearing a thong,
quarantine,
but I'm
baby.
not wearing pants.
Yeah, I'm glad you're wearing a thong, at least.
Yeah,
keep it decent.
Right up the crack, I might add. But it's really hot. I don't know if,
Oh, so it's all swampy. But anyway, kind of doubling back a little bit. I mean, you've touched on it a little bit, but I guess, do you feel like the legacy of the film has changed a little bit since 2001? Like, I feel like, personally, it's developed a bit of a cult following. Has your perspective on its reception kind of shifted?
But so what's been interesting is over the years, I've softened to it. And like I saw it not long ago, and I was like, well, this is not horrible. I mean, I mean, it's better than Jason, Takes Manhattan.
Yes.
He's in
yes.
Manhattan for like 5
Brian
minutes.
Collins, and Brian Collins will not like that I said that, but I don't care. I just don't care.
Your secret's safe.
No, Todd, you're right. I'm siding with you on this one.
Totally.
Look, I think what works about Jason X is the tongue-in-cheek. There's so many quotable lines that gets credit to you. There's yeah, he's screwed. My favorite scene in the movie is when she gets sucked through the air vent or the little. That's kind of brilliant.
We had no budget for special effects at that point, so we just threw some beef at the screen. And that worked. But,
I love it.
I mean, look, I remember not being excited about the fact that we were going all tongue-in-cheek with it, because Scream had come out and everybody was trying to be Scream.
Yeah.
And so, but at some point, you argue a little bit and then you move on. And so, he screwed was my line. So at that point, I had embraced what it had become. And so I have to take my blame.
Now, is there a line in that you look back on and you're like, oh God, why did I put that line in there?
No, I mean, it's all part of the process. I mean, there's nothing jumps out at me as being a problem. I thought all the actors came in and they just brought their own special weirdness to it, and which was great. And overall, I can't look back on it. And I remember when I first saw it, and I saw it with a handful of friends and at Universal, and there was nobody in the theater. And so there was a moment when I was like, all right, it was a good try. It's a good run. So I guess I'm going back to construction. Because I just figured it was over. I was like, who's ever going to hire me after this? And then, as fate would have it, I wrote some other stuff and it turned out okay.
As a fan of this franchise, this kind of presents a rare opportunity for us. We have the writer of an official Friday the 13th here, so if you'll indulge me a moment, I want to try and make something canon.
All right.
In the movie, you mentioned that hockey is banned in 2024, so we got 4 more years.
We do.
With you as the writer of that movie, why do you think it becomes illegal?
It's banned because of Jason. Because there was an idea that I had in the back of the head. I don't think I've ever told anyone this. There was an idea that I had in the back of my head that a group of people after Jason is frozen starts, because the documents are there because that's what they use when they recreate Crystal Lake. Got all these books and stories of it. That they start wearing hockey masks and machetes and going out and killing people. So it's like The Purge, but long, long, long before The Purge. And as a result, these Jason Voorhees fans, they get hockey banned because no one can wear hockey masks. But
that is great.
Yeah, I actually haven't thought about that in 20 years. So
look, we love Friday the 13th, but you've done some really beautiful work. Yeah, look, I'm going to jump right into My Bloody Valentine.
Yeah.
Remakes are hard enough, Todd. You know this. We all know this. I will say this on record, absolutely. My Bloody Valentine is one of the best horror remakes ever made.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
This thing is
I
beautiful.
That's where we met, too. We met.
Yeah, that's where we met.
Yeah.
That's what I was telling Ryan.
You guys go way back.
What was your inspiration? How did you feel about kind of taking the minor and bringing him into the modern day?
I mean, I thought it was, what I liked about the original was the original played more adult than a bunch of teenagers. And so it felt like it had adult themes. And I thought, well, that's kind of interesting. So we could play around with that. And then the script that they had was very different. And I'm sure Patrick talked about it. It was they were in a pulp mine. It was the fireman was the bad guy. I mean, everything about it was a little different. And they wanted to bring it back to closer to the original. And so that's when they brought me in. And the interesting thing about it is I didn't want to normally, like if you're trying to get a job, normally you would go back and you watch the movie again, you'd study it, but I sort of already had the job. And so I thought, well, I don't want to go back and see the original because I had these ideas of things that I loved about the original. So I want to pay tribute to those, but I don't want to be influenced. I had not seen it since I first saw it. It's not a movie that I had watched over and over and over. So I remembered the dryer scene, and I'd remembered all these little moments that I wanted to use, and he was the same way. I think he had gone back and watched it though, I'm pretty certain. But it's one of those, the thing was, we didn't want to do the same movie over again, but at the same time, sort of our tribute was the original movie was the first 10 minutes of our movie. And then we just go from there and see what happens.
Well, I think that's why it works, because you, instead of just trying to create a brand new story, it works in a way as a sequel to the original film.
I think it does.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it was like one of the best uses of 3D during that like 3D wave, in my opinion.
I mean, it was nuts because we didn't even know what 3D was. We thought 3D was Friday the 13th 3D and Jaws 3D. And so it wasn't until right up to the point where we were shooting that we were like, holy crap, look what this can do. And I remember the scene where the miner breaks through a door and you sort of see into this other room. And it's stunning because suddenly you're a voyeur sitting inside the movie. And we didn't know that when we wrote it. It wasn't something that, we didn't know that would happen. So it's been kind of nuts. And by the way, we were the first all live action 3D, the very first. And we had, the cameras were the size of refrigerators, and you could only, we had to try out different cars, different vehicles, because the camera wouldn't fit in them. So it was all of that. And then when the movie did finally come out, I can't remember how many, but we were in like 900 theaters.
Yeah.
Maybe it was more than that, but it wasn't a lot of theaters. And then we had to be out in 2 weeks. We were still selling out theaters, but we had to be out because Coraline came in, because that's the only 3D theaters they had. So I think we would have been hugely successful. We were successful, but I think we would have been monstrous if we had been able to stay in the theaters, and we had to go make room. And I understand it, but it's.
I don't think people expected it to be as good. I don't people expected to have the kind of reaction people had to it.
Yeah.
I don't, and the 3D is some of the, still to this day, I look at, you look at Avatar, of course, it's the beautiful 3D. I think My Bloody Valentine is up there.
I do too. I think we shot in 3D. There's no conversion. There's none of that. Everything on screen is what we shot, and I think it makes a difference. And there's so much that went into what those guys did, tweaking the eyes so that you go in, you don't have a headache, and it's just everything about it was just a wonderful experience. And you have, that whole, you remember the whole shotgun scene? All of that was his idea. He was like, what if I do this? So everybody was getting into it, and so I mean that's great. That's fun.
I'm so glad I got to see that in theaters. Like, it was the trailer too, because I remember the shot where he's like reaching into the audience, the miner. I was like, I gotta see this. I had to sneak into it. I was under 17 at that point. But I'm so glad I did.
I would like to take some. I'm sorry for some of the things that we caused.
I wouldn't be doing this.
Sorry for my naked ass too.
I got to see that in 3D at age like 14.
Wow.
So
good for you.
Thank you.
That is
that was part of my horror education.
I'm going to ask you about that scene, Todd, because do you think a scene like that would be easy to do now? Because it's a very different time, obviously, with Me Too and all that. Do you think it'd be harder, especially with her being naked and you being naked? A lot of nakedness in that scene.
I don't think so. I mean, look, the idea was always, the only reason I did it because, I've told this story before, but I did it because they wanted to cast local, and I was worried that you're doing effects and you're doing the sex scene, and that's really tough, and we don't have a lot of time, and Patrick's like, I know, will you do it? And so I did it, and in doing so, I always liked the idea that I should do it, because we always ask girls to take their clothes off, so why shouldn't I do it? And then I'm the writer, so I'm going to take and you know how you always come back to the movies where Mel Gibson, he's just had sex, and you just see the glimpse of his butt as he pulls the pants up? No, I didn't do that. I just left that butt out there for a while. It's just Todd Farmer buttocks for, I don't know, 20, 30 seconds. And that's just a part of it. And so, but at the same time, Frank, the character I play, is a dick. He deserved what he had coming. I think you need to see people who act like that, because Frank he's the first Me Too guy, and he deserved to get a pickaxe in the head.
Yes, he did.
I mean, that's my feeling. And so it's the same thing with Frank in Drive Angry as well. He was a dick, so he deserved it. So, I mean, I remember somebody saying, well, you just don't like women. No, I adore women. That's why I always get killed when I'm a dick. Because there should be consequences to our actions. Anyway, yeah, I think it would play today, because if the dick gets it in the head after it's over, then yeah.
You'd probably
Just
get
happened
cheers.
twice.
Like,
Yeah.
major cheers right now. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, no doubt. And these are both movies that you worked with who's again, another guest on our show, Patrick Lussier. How did you two kind of become a team? Like, what makes you two work so well together that you've partnered up on Drive Angry, Bloody Valentine, Trick?
I mean, I think it's a bunch of stuff. I mean, we met on something called Scarecrow, which became The Messengers, and that was at Revolution Studios ages ago. It was The Shining on a Farm, and it was Messengers with what's her name, who became a sparkly vampire.
Kristen Stewart.
Kristen Stewart, yeah.
And so that's where we met, but neither one of us made it to the actual filming of the project. I was replaced by Stuart Beatty, and Patrick was replaced by, I guess, the Pang brothers. And it became a completely different story. But that's how we met. But we sort of stayed in touch and stayed friends through all that time. And then he was working on a movie, and I think this was all very quiet, but he was working on a movie. He was doing reshoots on a film. And I had reached out to him saying, hey, what's going on? And we got on the phone, and he was stressed. And he was like, I got to shoot this scene tomorrow, and it's horrible. And I said, well, do you want me to take a look at it? And not because I'm Mr. Fix-It-All. He sounded frustrated, and I was like, I mean, you want me to look at it? Maybe I have some ideas. And so I looked at it. I did have some ideas. And so I rewrote the scene in like an hour, but I did it in a way that it doesn't change anything. It's the same scene. It's just I moved the characters' dialogue and all that and sent it back to him. And he was like, oh, thank you so much. And so he sent me a couple more scenes over the next week or so. And it was a movie, I mean, I shouldn't go into too much detail, but it was a movie for Lionsgate. And so the executives all knew I was doing it. So when it came time to do Valentine, Patrick said, well, I'd like to bring Todd in. And they were like, oh yeah, let's do that. And so because I'd already kind of paid my dues. But Patrick and I, on Valentine, when I left, they brought in another writer. And things didn't work out. And so Patrick, they wouldn't bring me back in to fix that. So Patrick started doing some rewriting himself to fix stuff that had happened. And when it came time to arbitrate, Patrick couldn't arbitrate for credit because he wasn't technically hired. And so I said, you know what, from now on, we'll be a partnership, and they can never take your credit away like that. And so we've been writing together. Now, we don't always write together. He's written other stuff, I've written other stuff. But when we write together, he's protected, I'm protected. And we have a nice little shorthand, which is great. I mean, he'll throw out ideas, I'll throw out ideas, and then we tend to always like the same ideas. So that's the good thing.
What do you think makes a strong partnership? I mean, that's a rare thing to hear about.
It's mostly the sex.
Well, yeah,
no,
of course.
It's not the sex.
Of course it is.
I think it's twofold. I think number one, he thinks, as an editor, he thinks in a way I don't know how to think. And so he sees things, he sees cuts, he sees things in a way my brain doesn't work that way. And so he can lead me down a path that I wouldn't normally go. And I tend to be raw in my ideas and things. And the thing is, what's weird is the more we've worked together, we've sort of merged. So now I'm a little bit better with the editing. He's a little bit better he's a lot better with the raw. So I mean, we complemented each other early on. My weaknesses he was great at, and his weaknesses I was great at. And so I thought that was, for us, that was the best thing. And then when it came time to film, there's no better way to put it, and I wasn't a dick, because a lot of writers will go in and say, well, it's my idea and it's my this and my that. And I was never like that. When we went into a production place, it became Patrick's movie. I had nothing to do with it. My job was to support his vision, and however that vision may change, because he's got the director's head, he knows how things are changing. I don't. So it is my job to, even if I don't necessarily understand why he's doing what he's doing, I have to support it, because if I go in there and start fighting it, well, that's not going to help.
Yeah.
The biggest problem I ever have with movies is because it feels like it's a movie by committee. So you've got all these different brains coming in, and it just feels disjointed. And so I think that helped as well, maybe. I don't know. I haven't talked to him about that.
I think there's truth to that, because when you see like a big tentpole movie in the summer, when you see all those names of all those writers and
Yeah.
all those producers. You kind of get that sense of, and not saying that's all bad at all,
Yeah.
but
No.
you it does feel like product oftentimes. It doesn't feel
definitely.
like,
I feel
when
like
you
it takes
you watch
away
a-
something.
Yeah, and you watch a movie like My Bloody Valentine, well, forgive me for saying it has heart. See what I did there?
No, I mean, I was gonna ask, kind of, having spent so much time in this genre, both as just someone who enjoys horror movies and from a writer's perspective, what do you think makes a strong horror movie?
It's hard to nail down the one thing. I know what I gravitate to, and it's just that horror is it's all the genres, and that sounds silly, but it is. Like you can have all the genres rolled into one, and that's what makes it so much more intriguing to me. It's intriguing as a writer. You can have a full-on romance inside a horror movie. You can have a buddy movie inside a horror movie. You can have comedy. You can have drama. You can have all of it inside the same movie. And you don't really get the opportunity to do that with, like, you don't have horror in a James Bond movie. You'll have a scene that's horrific, but it's not horror. And I know you have movies that sort of, they bleed into each other and do that, and that's not what I'm talking about. I'm just talking the genre itself. You can look at all of the horror movies, put them all in a row, and they'll all have different elements, and I love that. So when it comes to telling a good story, at least in the horror world, I think it always comes down to character. And if you care about the characters, then for me, it's fun. I know there are movies you make so that the characters are dicks so that you cheer when they die, which is great because I've certainly played that character. But at the same time, there should be characters in there that you care about, that you want to follow. And
Absolutely.
I think it always starts with the characters.
I think you're absolutely right on that, because I'm thinking back to horror movies I've loved that have meshed genres so well. Like Warm Bodies is a romantic zombie movie, and then The Apocalypse is a freaking musical on Christmas with zombies and a lot of humor. I think that's you don't see that anywhere else.
But if you look at Big Trouble in Little China, or you look at The Thing, you look at Blade Runner, these were movies that were failures because I think it's because they crossed the genres. It's because they crossed the streams, and people didn't. I'm certainly Drive Angry did the same thing, because people are like, well, is it a comedy? Is it a horror? Is it action? What the hell is it? And so I think that's a risk, but at the same time, those are my favorite movies. I want to see the movie that breaks the rules. I want to see Jason fight a girl who can move crap with her mind. That's what I liked about the whole Friday the 13th franchise. That's what I like about movies in general. So it's a weird thing, but I hope one day we go back to making movies again. That would be fun.
Oh, God. That would be amazing. Oh my God, dude.
Oh, I miss it. I miss it so much.
Okay, this is a weird question. Are you everyone now is like, oh, what's going to be the COVID movie? What's going to be the COVID horror movie? Are you thinking about that? Is that like, oh yeah, let's do a horror movie that takes place in the pandemic?
I mean, I know it should happen because it's a part of our lives, and it's a part of our, it's a part of the story that we live in. So it should be. I don't know if there should be the COVID movie, and maybe there will be, but it certainly will play a part of movies that we see. I mean, I know that I've got a movie that's at Netflix right now, and the last draft was to sort of tweak there was already a viral element to it, but it was to tweak it to make it a little more similar to what we're all going through. It's changed everything. I mean, even it's going to change the way it's already changed. Like, I have friends who have shot films and are shooting films right now. Everything is different. The way we write is different. The movies that I had ready to go, most of them can't go because of the way they're written, because they can't be shot in today's world. And so that's very different. So if you're brand new and trying to break into the business, and you've been writing and working your day job and coming home and writing, now you got to change the way you think. But we all do. So it's going to be tricky.
Going to be interested to see what comes out of it, because I feel like there's a rich tradition in horror of kind of holding a mirror up to something terrifying in the real world and adding something to it. And with all this actual horrific stuff going on this year, I'm very interested to see. I
mean, The Host was brilliant for this very reason. Did you guys check it out?
No, I was going to check that out, and I was hesitant because I'm not a huge Unfriended fan. I didn't love that movie, And so I was like, I hope it's not another Unfriended, but the reviews are really solid.
No,
it looks really
I thought we
good.
were talking the South Korean movie.
No,
That's good too, but no.
That's good too.
I forgot there's a new host.
Yes.
It's worth checking out, because what's brilliant about it is it's our job as writers to write to the industry, to write to, there was a long time we were all writing to 3D, and we were writing to Asian horror, and we were writing, and there was a bunch of guys that were writing to torture porn. And that's our job, to adapt and improvise and overcome to what the system is allowing us. And so that's why I appreciated it, because they took the system that they had and they used it, and they did it really well. So you should check it out. I won't say anything else, because that would be spoilers.
I'm planning to check it out, yes.
I might actually watch that tonight after we shoot this.
It's on Shudder, right?
Shudder, yeah.
It is
yeah.
on Shudder, yes.
Well, we're talking kind of about the future of movies. I guess I want to take it back a little bit and ask what were some of your creative influences growing up and some of your favorite horror movies back in the day.
I can tell you the ones that influenced me the most. I mean, I remember the first time I saw a Swamp Thing comic book. Reading it was cinematic. It was more cinematic than my G.I. Joe or than my Spider-Man comic. This felt like something that I could see as a story. And then we used to have this thing called free HBO, because I'm old. And free HBO would be like one weekend you could, if you didn't pay for HBO, you could watch it for free.
Uh-huh.
And they would, like, every movie or two, they'd say, hey, you know what? You should pay for this. You should subscribe. And so, like, I got to see Frank, is it Langella? I always say his name wrong.
Frank Langella, yeah, the
Langella.
Dracula?
Yeah, it's Dracula. And this is the first time I was a kid. Like, I was tiny. I saw Jaws. I saw Halloween. Like, all of that happened during, this one free HBO weekend. I don't remember how old I was, but I was teeny, like too young. Like, I was climbing the couch during that dock scene when the dock turns around the water and Jaws is coming back out of that fisherman.
Yeah,
I was just clawing my way up the couch. And but I mean, that for me, that changed everything. And so once that happened, I started looking at movies in a different light, having no idea I would ever do it. What I thought I would do was write novels, because I was in Kentucky. I mean, nobody in Kentucky makes movies. So I thought I would write books, because how could I ever get to Hollywood? Now I'm here in this nice shed.
But yeah, it's a lot. I like the lips in back of you. Those are nice.
Well,
it's
very Rocky Horror.
It's a she shed. So this is my side, that's her side.
Okay.
So
I like it.
Well, it's great because it's got a desk where I can, like, do tools and stuff. But I brought my computer, so I've been writing out here because I can stand up. And so I basically stopped going into the house. I don't use my office anymore because I'm out here with my tools. If I need to pull my saw out, I can.
That was surprisingly quick.
Wow.
You're just at the ready with that thing.
Well, it's battery powered.
Okay.
So
I thought it was like plugged in.
You don't have a body down there, Todd, right? There's no like body, right, with that saw?
No, not as far as you know.
Okay,
Body
good.
and no pants.
No, there's definitely no pants.
Yeah.
Well, good. I'm taking my pants off right now too. So let's hold on.
We here at Sound Scary do not support pants on Zoom.
We've mentioned Drive Angry. Let's jump into Drive Angry, because this movie is so freaking underrated. I love this film.
Oh yeah.
And I'm not just saying that because I'm a friend of yours, dude. I love this movie, and I remember again seeing it in theaters and being just wowed by the sheer audacity of it. It's wild. How did you feel when it, because I know that film meant a lot to you. Was it difficult to kind of deal with the kind of negativity that came out about it because people didn't respond to it and didn't know how to respond to it?
I mean, I think the whole idea of how a movie was going to do, the tracking, it was new for me. I guess they knew, but I didn't know. So we'd taken Izzy to Disneyland because I thought, well, this time I'm not going to stress about it. I stressed during Jason X, I stressed during Valentine. This time I'm just going to go to Disney. Around 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, I called Patrick and I was like, because I hadn't heard from him, I was like, hey, how'd we do? Because I was fully expecting we did great. Why wouldn't we do great? It was a great story. We got Nick Cage. We got Fichtner. I mean, I thought it would be great. And he was like, yeah, we made, I don't remember what it was, like 5.1. And I was like, oh, 5.1, like for Friday? And he goes, no, that's for the weekend. I was like,
Wow.
oh, because Jason X made 6.8, and that's without 3D prices. So I was like, huh, okay, well, I've been here before. It's not fun. But yeah, it was tough. But still, I love the movie. I don't have any, if I could go back and do it all again, I'd still do it that way. We originally talked about doing it for Tom Atkins and Betsy Rue. And it was going to be just a tiny little movie because we were going to go back and we thought we were going to do My Bloody Valentine 2. And we said to them, we'll do your second movie, the movie you'll make all this money on. But we want to do this little dirty $4 or $5 million thing with Tom Atkins and Betsy Rue. And that didn't happen. So.
Oh man, it would have been real interesting to see Tom Atkins in that role.
Right?
See him running around fucking and shooting.
Yeah. I mean, I could see it. Yeah. You ended up casting an actor that I love very, very much. I'm a big Nick Cage fan, and I have to ask, do you have any fun behind the scenes stories from working with him? Because he seems like he'd be a blast.
I mean, he's a nut. He's totally a nut. So everything, but it's weird. He's the first real celebrity that I had been around. Like I'd seen people, because it's Hollywood, so you see people all the time. But he's the first one I actually, like he's not like everybody else. He's not like us, but he can't be because he's been a celebrity for so long that changes you. And so he can't go to Target. He can't go. We went to a restaurant one night, Patrick, myself, DeLuca, and Nick. Within 30 minutes, we were. It was like the Beatles. We were run out. We couldn't stay.
Oh my gosh.
Because he simply cannot go out and be a normal person. And so that changes you, but he still, he was the most professional when it came to showing up and being on time and knowing his lines. The day that he first showed up, he beelined to me and started showing me these lines and readings and talking. And he had this tiny little script, and he's going through it, and he's like, I was thinking about doing this, and what do you think about this? And I mean, what am I supposed to say? Because I'm like, Nick, you do whatever you want, buddy. You just do it. You just go for it. And that's what he did. What he did normally was he would read the line the way it was written, and then he would start, the second take he'd start messing around with it. And that was and some of that stuff, that's how you end up with these weird Nickisms, because a lot of times the writers can't write that. That's just Nick. And so
just gotta let him off the chain, I guess.
Oh yeah. But he was I had no regrets. We had heard horror stories. We had none. He was a perfect gentleman the whole time. Yeah,
I love the cast of that movie. Everyone, you got Chris Campbell, you got Amber Heard, you got all these amazing, really talented people. William Fichtner, as you mentioned.
Oh, that's great.
What that must have been a dream come true to walk on that set and see all the, like, oh wow, we got these people.
It totally was. Like, I remember when Patrick talked to Bill for the first time, and I knew who Bill was. He's the guy. Oh yeah, I know that guy. You know the face, but not everyone knows the name. And he was talking about him, and I was like, because I thought it was an odd choice, not because Bill's not good. It's just for Patrick to be so passionate about someone that he might have to fight for, because Bill wasn't, he's not a bigger name, or he wasn't at the time. But then to see him deliver the first line, you're like, oh yeah, he is. And for him, it was there's a description of in the screenplay that you never even see. It's like he sort of materializes on the horizon, because it was basically High Plains Drifter. And he's got this purple tie, and he's got a bounce to his step. And so Bill sort of took that description and just created the character that you see. That's not really someone the dialogue is the same, but the way he delivers the dialogue is just... And so Bill is the one guy that I keep in touch with even now. Like we were texting, a month ago. Like, and we've texted all through this because, how are you doing? Are you alive in all this?
Yeah.
No, that was great casting. His performance was so fun. He had such an interesting natural charisma and just casualness to the way he delivered some crazy lines. I loved what he brought to it.
And his thing to Patrick was, I'm not offered this kind of role. This is not the kind of role I'm not normally offered this. And since then, and this is all due to him, not us, but he went on to the Lone Ranger, and he has now become that guy that you can go to for these heavy roles, or even the good guy role. And so I would love to work with him again.
One of the things I noticed with that movie and some of the other ones that you've worked on is they're very driven by a prominent soundtrack. Like that one being kind of a hard rock. Do you find that music kind of influences your writing style?
Oh, absolutely. Both Patrick and I both are very into music, and that's why we keep going back to Michael Wallmacher, because he can do all of that. And since we've been working with him, he's gone off to do the Goldbergs, and so the Goldbergs became this huge show. But he still comes back and will work on a little movie like Trick with us. And so he's just like, when I write to instrumentals. Like I don't, because if it's got words, I'm going to sing. And so his soundtracks, and not even the stuff not just the stuff he did for us, but I'm always listening to Wallmachers. But yeah, music is a huge part of, and I think we got to throw props to James Gunn, because he has allowed us to write music into screenplays again, just from Guardians of the Galaxy.
Oh,
and
of
so,
course.
for sure. And so I wrote a rock and roll biopic before all this happened. And I knew going into that I was going to use the band's music, but I used other influential music too, music that had influenced the band themselves. And so I had the freedom to do that. So yeah, music is, writing, directing, editing, music, that's a movie.
Well, I was going to say, if you're going to, Todd, we need to get you to sing. So once this COVID thing is over, you're joining me and Ryan for karaoke.
Okay.
You have to.
No problem with that.
Sweet.
Cool. You don't have to wear your pants. You can show your butt.
I don't want to offend anyone.
Well, who would be offended by your butt? Seriously.
That's true.
Well, let's jump in really quickly, because I both Ryan and I watched Trick when we had Patrick on, and we really enjoyed this movie. It was so much fun. Yeah, it was nice to see an old school slasher film again.
Oh yeah,
that was the whole reason that we wrote the thing, just to be a throwback to the movies that we grew up with, to Halloween, to
Yeah, that had such a fun vibe, and I love that. Like, we have a slasher doing parkour.
I know, right?
That was really cool. I legitimately love that.
Lou was incredible. He was Cirque du Soleil, so he could do literally anything. And then you've got Gary Tunnicliffe, who does our effects. Gary is the only guy that I've ever met who I'm like scared of. Like, I don't want to set him off, because he will drop me. And anyway, the two of them would just go at it, and they'd be all over the place. They were just but man, we had some incredible stunts and incredible jumping around and doing stuff, because this kid Leo could just do anything. You just tell him to climb the wall, and he would climb that wall.
I know at one point that you were attached to doing a Hellraiser as well as a Halloween. If you don't mind me asking, kind of what were your versions of those have been?
Yeah, Halloween was first. That was to follow Rob's second Halloween.
Okay.
And then the Hellraisers, we wrote it fast, wrote it in like 8 days, because we had to go into production before Drive Angry. So we had to go into production we had to be out of production by Christmas. And so anyway, it didn't work. And so we were told that when we got out of Drive Angry, we would come back and do Halloween. But when we came back, they wanted to do Hellraiser, which was great. So did Patrick talk about Hellraiser at all?
He did, but I just kind of wanted to hear your perspective on it. And he didn't talk Halloween either.
He came up with this concept that was just nuts. It was basically Fichtner. Fichtner as Pinhead was sort of his idea. And you've got Fichtner sitting in this, basically a throne, a big wooden throne in the dark, and he's lights over the top, and he's got a gun. He's pointed right at the camera, and then he's got 3 nails, like nails you'd see it on, inside a cross tie or something, big gnarly nails just sticking out, blood trickling down. And it was like and he's holding the cube in the other hand, and he's like, the rabbit hole, how far are you willing to go? And we wrote this screenplay about a guy and his wife, and they lose a child, and he's gone a bit nuts, and so he's getting into this dark world, and the idea was, and I can ruin it now because we're never going to do it, the idea was, you think this is the Pinhead prequel, that this is how Pinhead became Pinhead, because we made you think that. We wanted you to think that. And then in the third act, when he's got inside the rabbit hole, you meet Pinhead. but now he's the architect of the whole place.
That's awesome.
And so, because we got a lot of flack. You're like, why weren't you going to bring back the original? But we couldn't say, well, we are, but that's the surprise. So
Very cool.
Anyway,
I would have liked to see that.
yeah,
Me too.
And then we did a different movie had come out, because the Weinsteins wanted this big loud thing. A different movie had come out, and they were like, we love this, but we wish it could be like this movie that just came out and made, 500 million. And so we're like, okay, so we then did a whole bunch of rewrites to fix it. So now it was about a guy and his daughter, and his daughter's friends, the daughter's friends. So it basically made it younger. And still, I thought it was great. Yeah, but could it be more like Final Destination? So it's just teens. Okay, fine. So we wrote it about a bunch of teens. And this completely changed things, because now
Right.
the adult drama sort of goes out of it. But at this point, we were just trying to get to the next step. So we wrote it, and I still think that's a really good version. It's not the best version, because I think the best version is the first version. But that's the thing about being a screenwriter. A lot of people, executives and producers, will say, this is a really good starting point. And I'm like, bitch, if it was a good starting point, I wouldn't have sent it to you. Jeez. Dickheads. Anybody that tells you that and you're a writer, they can shampoo my crotch.
I'll take your word for that.
That's beautiful. That is beautiful.
Kind of a glimpse behind. I've never been a writer, so this is a look behind the curtains.
Todd, I was going to bring up, you, and I don't know how, you've talked about this a lot. You've had a really interesting life. You've had a really interesting experience, and you kind of had to rise above some stuff. Are you willing to talk about that? Living out of a car and that kind of thing?
Well, look, porn is... Wait, what?
Porn, exactly. There's nothing wrong with porn.
No!
With a butt like that?
Yeah, I slept in my car. But I mean, it happens. I'm not the first. It was just a weird perfect storm of events that it led to that. I had moved, my ex-wife and I had split up, and she was moving back to Memphis. And so we were in Pacific Grove at the time, about 6 hours north. So I moved to LA. It was one of those things where we'd split up all our money and everything was a little tight, and the industry had sort of, because Drive Angry had come out, and Patrick and I, weren't getting a lot of work. And so I ended up having to take a regular job, which is not a bad thing. I mean, people do it all the time. There's lots of writers out there struggling, trying to get into the business, and they're working a full-time job.
Yeah.
I had a job at Toyota, and it was, it didn't pay hardly anything, but it paid the bills.
Yeah.
And but the problem was, after I sent money to Memphis and after I paid the bills, I just didn't have enough money to stay anywhere. And so I was, my living arrangement had changed. So I could have gone and stayed with Tyler, Maine, because Tyler and Renee had a place up in Santa Clarita, and they had said, come. But it was too far away. I had a lease, and I just couldn't do the miles if you did the math. So I slept in the car a couple nights and kept thinking it was temporary, and then it wasn't temporary. But I got good at it. I learned all the tricks. I learned how to do it. I had a cheap membership to a gym. So after work, I'd go to the gym and work out and then take a shower. And so I was clean. I didn't stink. I had, I took care of the car. I took care, it became, and I just made peace with it. And, I didn't say anything to anybody. For instance, Patrick was working on Terminator. I wasn't going to say anything to him because why would I ever distract him with that? He's at the point where either one of us would have killed to work on Terminator. Now he's doing that. So I'm not going to do anything to screw that up by saying, oh yeah, I'm glad it's so great for you. Hey, I'm in my car. Because he's off doing Terminator. I'm not going to say something to him. Didn't say anything to anybody. The only reason I said anything to Tyler is because he figured it out. And he was drunk, and when he's drunk, he's psychic, so I couldn't get out of it. And Tyler knew, and then Derek knew, but they lived too far away.
Yeah.
And so, but look, it is what it is. I wasn't the only one, and the only reason I wrote this silly article in the first place is because I kept thinking, I can't be the only guy that's gone through this. I mean, it's not like I had, I never made $1 million, but I had a decent career, and then suddenly it's kind of gone away. And it was coming back at that time when I wrote the article. And so I was like, I should share this, because if there's guys out there, girls out there who are struggling, then they should know that they're not alone. And don't be stupid like me and sleep in your car. Talk to your friends. But yeah, I mean, but again, no regrets. I mean,
Yeah.
I paid all my bills.
No,
I feel like you
it's,
learn from experience like that, right? I mean, you have to. That's
Right.
that's how we grow.
No, and for those, for people watching this, it's like an amazingly heartfelt article. I really enjoyed giving that a read, and
Well, thank you.
you
And it
should all
was
go
worked
look
out.
it up. It's called From Hollywood to Homeless, right?
I think that's what. Yeah, I think that's. Yeah. Well, I mean, it was one of those. I was gonna put it on my personal website, which nobody even knows about, and I reached out to Devin, who was running Badass Digest at the time, and I said, I wrote this thing. I'm gonna put it on my website unless you have any interest. And he was like, I would be honored to print this. And so I woke up the next day and looked, and it had gone Hollywood viral, and I was like, oh damn. So what is this gonna do?
Did you ever regret that? Did you ever have any, like, oh gosh, I didn't want to go that big, or?
I had a bit of a panic attack, because like, okay, well, because we're not supposed to tell our drama. We're not supposed to tell what went wrong. We're not supposed to. I even said in the article, everybody likes success, and here I'm talking about how I was a failure.
Yeah.
And so there was that anxiety, but then I got contacted by a lot of people to come and talk about it. And I mean, I don't know how long it's been, but I didn't, because I didn't write it for that reason. I didn't write it to get press. I didn't write it to get a job. I wrote it because I thought others could use the knowledge that you're not alone. And I had thousands and thousands of emails and messages on Facebook and messages on Twitter. And I spent the next couple of weeks just talking to everyone. People we all know, people you've interviewed, would reach out and had gone through similar things and were just terrified to tell anyone. And I don't blame them. And I understand why. And people who lost everything, who lost homes, I never had that much to lose in the first place, but people were reaching out to me to tell me about friends they had who were dead, who took their own lives, who drank themselves to death, in that, going through that same situation. So, I feel like it helped a few people, and that's a good thing. So,
I think it helped a lot. I think it helped. Look, Todd, I'll be honest. When I read the article, I knew you. It broke my heart, but it just made me respect you more. I'm going to get all teary-eyed, because that was really, honestly, I was so moved by it, and I just, and now look at you. You've become this. You're legendary.
I'm living in this fancy shed.
I know, with lips on the wall.
Yeah,
no pants on. I mean,
I tell people they're her lips. They're my lips.
Oh, Todd, I don't want this to end, but we do have to wrap it up. But I do want to, we had talked a little bit about some scary stories and some ghost stories. I think you may have one for us.
There'll be food and drink and ghosts, and perhaps even a few murders. You're all invited.
I was always the guy who wanted to see the UFO and wanted to see the Bigfoot and wanted to see those things, wanted to see ghosts, and never happened. I would stay out late at night and go through the woods and try to find stuff, and it never happened. And then when I was in college, my roommate, one night, I woke up one morning and I looked over and my roommate looked terrified. And I was like, what is going on? And he said, I don't even want to tell you this. And we were at a Christian college. And he said, and I was like, what is going on? And he said, okay, well, in the middle of the night, I looked over and both of our beds were like this. Mm-hmm. And at the foot of our beds, you had these little areas where you had like a little chest of drawers, tiny little thing about, 2 foot high. And he said, I looked over and there was a guy sitting on top of, he said, but he was like squatting on top of your little chest of drawers. And he said, as far as I could tell, he wasn't wearing a stitch of clothing, and he was pale, totally pale. And he had like black all over his face. Whoa. And he was just staring at you. And he looked over at me, and he saw me, and then he pointed at you and smiled. And he said, and I just rolled over. And he said, and I rolled over and I stared out the window, because the window's on the other side of the room. And he said, I rolled over. And this, by the way, this is not a guy who Like this is a guy who grew up and became a preacher. I mean, this is not a guy who spins yarns like this. Anyway, he stares at the wall, or stares outside, and he said, you know, as the sun started to roll up, I rolled over and I thought, well, because he said I hadn't slept. He said I had to have dreamt this, and he rolled over and he was still there. He said, so I rolled over again, and because he said because the light was coming in, he said, well, this will make it go away. And so he said, it wasn't until you started moving that I knew you were waking up that I rolled over and he's not there now. And so, and he was I was like, well, what do you think? Because I was freaked out. I was like, what do you think this means? And he says, I think it means you're going to hell. Well, we knew that. But the interesting thing is, I would say half a dozen times over the course of my illustrious career that I have seen him. And it's always been. And then I know there was one time, the first time it happened was at 241 South New Hampshire. So if you live there, good on you. That's in Koreatown. And I came in one night and he was sitting, because my desk was in the living room, and he was sitting on my desk in that squatted position. And I came in fast, and I saw him as I went by, and I spun back and it wasn't there. And then I can remember a couple of times that I've seen, and then there was a time not long ago here at this house when I came out to, you know, early morning, 4 o'clock in the morning to do my pee. That's what you do when you get old. And he was there, and I felt him first. Like, I was like, it was one of those things, you know how sometimes you see something, you look back and it's not there? Mm-hmm. I saw something, I looked back and it was there. And then there was, it's happened twice here. And then there was one night we were in bed and I rolled over and I thought I saw him, because we have a chair and an ottoman in the corner of the room. And I thought I saw him like on the back of the chair, and always in this squatted position, just sort of hunched over. And I saw it and I thought, well, no, that's the clothes were stacked up there or something else. And then he jumped down, walked across the room and left. Jeez. And almost not even walked across the room, glided across the room. And so it's I've never seen him in full daylight. It's always been dark. Don't think he's a ghost. I mean, I know he's not a ghost. So you asked for ghost stories. Sorry.
Yeah. No, that works.
We asked for scary stories, and you did
something else.
Wow.
Frightening.
That's wild.
Is it fear? Do you feel fear? What do you feel when you see him?
Yeah, it's complete total panic. It's absolute fear. It's like you don't want to move fear. It's not a waking terror. It's not anything like that, because I can get up right after. Yeah. And I did. I got up right after and go, and like I feel the fear, but at the same time I feel the pissed offness. And so, you know, so he walks across the room and I get up, and it's it's always dark. It's never a full moon kind of dark. It's always dark.
Wow.
And so it's almost like it could be the tumor, but at the same time, you know, it's just as physical as me talking to you guys now. So it's not like the first time was I could chalk that up as maybe my imagination. Yeah. Because I came into the apartment and we had the hardwood floors and it was loud, and I come running in with my stuff and I see it out of the corner of my eye and I turn and he's not there. So that could have been. But then I started thinking about it. It could be imagination. I give you that. But I also think we sometimes open doors we shouldn't open. And I think my seeing him, he's probably been there for years. And I just happened to be, whatever was going on in my world that time, I saw him. And from that point forward, I let him in. And I've been able to get him out. But, you know, I got goosebumps all over me right now because I know he's coming back at this point. But so if I die, bitches.
It's our fault.
I'm so sorry.
You should be. Why would you ask me that?
Jimmy asked. I'm just not going to tell any of my ghost stories. I don't want to open anything else. Like, people watching this, I'm so sorry. You're all cursed.
You know, Todd, we'd love to have you back on the show anytime. Would you come back on one time?
No.
Just to talk shit?
No.
Not after this, Jimmy.
No, I ain't coming.
No, this is like the tape from The Ring. We'll pass the interview on to 7 other people. Nice. Very cool.
Yes, I'll come back.
Yay!
Thank you.
Well,
Appreciate
dude, it was an absolute pleasure.
This was a blast.
You know I love you, dude. I'm glad to have you, and it means a lot that you showed up and and hung out with us.
Yeah, it's been
Thank
awesome
you.
talking with you.
It has been a pleasure.
So that was Sound Scary with Todd Farmer, Jason X Todd Farmer, Mike Bloody Valentine.
Such a cool
Drive
guy.
Angry. I love this guy.
And for everybody watching, show Jason X some love. Come on. That movie's
Please.
awesome. You
Thank
know
you.
it's awesome. Don't lie to us.
Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.